Welcome to this beautiful banquet location. A few years ago, SIG Mobile created the Test of Time Awards to recognize work in our field that truly had a lasting and sustained impact on the community. Okay. The only criterion beyond the level of impact is that the work should have been published more than 10 years ago so that we can really judge the level of impact, because often it's only with the only in hindsight you can appreciate the true value of this work. So this year we were awarded 3 Test of Time Awards. The Test of Time Awards went to the paper Nericell using mobile smartphones. It went to the paper Design of WAP, a wireless open access research platform. And the third paper is Sensing Meets Mobile Social Networks, the design, implementation, and evaluation of the SenseMe application. Now the winners get to choose a conference where they would like to accept the award. And the authors of the first paper here have chosen to accept the award at this MobiSys conference. The Nericell paper is a paper that pioneered the use of smartphones as a vehicle sensing platform. And if you remember the first keynote from this conference, you can appreciate the impact it has had on this community. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the authors of this paper here up on stage, and please congratulate them. Oh, can you get the cover off? Just peel off, yeah.
All 3 or just one?
All 3.
Thank
Here
you.
you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations. Here you go. So, can I get another round of applause for it? So, let's take a picture. So with that, I'd hand over to Venkat. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Venkat Padmanabhan from Microsoft Research India, and I'm here with Ramji, also from Microsoft Research India.
I'm Prashant from Google.
Yeah, but Prashant used to be with Microsoft Research India. That's when he got the award. That's when he did the work that got the award. So, it's an honor for all of us and a pleasure to be here to receive this award. We've put together a few slides. I think we were told we could present for about 15 minutes. It'll probably be shorter. Just talking about how this work happened and some anecdotes along the way, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So, the context here is that in 2007, I used to be in Microsoft Research in Redmond. Ram used to be in Bell Labs on the other side of the US, and both of us independently moved to India in around early 2007. Now, what happened is that, besides moving 10,000 miles, we moved to a very different world, right? So we moved from a world that looked like this on the roads, and perhaps during congested times looks like this, to a world that looked like that. Right? So the interesting thing about this picture is that no 2 vehicles look alike and no 2 of them are pointing the same way. Right? So, they are it's a very heterogeneous, chaotic mix of traffic. And so, the first thing that hits you when you reach India is traffic, almost literally. And we started thinking about what can we do about this, how can we measure this traffic, how can we monitor it. And Prashant joined us fresh from college, and that's how the project got started. Now, what's different? I think the thing that's different is that there is heterogeneity at every level. The roads are very uneven in quality. There is sort of things like potholes, there is a lot of honking, there is a variety of vehicle types and so on. And so the point is that until then, a lot of the work had focused on GPS-based vehicle tracking. And we said, okay, we need to go beyond GPS tracking to look at all the other modalities of sensing that matter from the viewpoint of, tracking, honking and road bumps and so on. Now, we said, okay, well, how do we do this? And smartphones were around for a few years, and we picked up what was then kind of state of the art, an HP iPac. And it turned out it had basically no sensors that we could use. So we had to put together a package that had some external sensors attached to this smartphone, and we used that as our experimental platform right in the beginning. A few months later, we actually got our hands on this thing that's on the dashboard here, which is actually, believe it or not, a smartphone. It was called the HTC Advantage. I guess some marketing guy came up with this name Advantage. We don't really see the advantage of this device, except that it had an embedded set of sensors, accelerometer and so on. It was the size of a mini laptop, but it's technically a phone. So we had challenges with regard to the hardware platform available, but despite that we were able to do a bunch of interesting work, which I will not go through. I mean, I've listed some of them here, and that's really in the paper. Now, we didn't really, so when we did the work, we were just sort of engrossed in this. But once we had done the work, we were very excited. We thought this is cool stuff, this is very interesting. And we said, okay, what's the coolest conference around? We thought MobiSys. So we sent the paper to MobiSys 2008. And unfortunately, they rejected the paper, right? Well, they didn't just reject the paper. They just disliked the paper. These were some of the comments we got. I mean, the first one, the first one is our favorite, right? I mean, I've never had a paper either before or since being called grossly unscientific. But anyway, that's what they call it. But to their credit, the reviewers were also generous in other ways. They did have some positive things to say. I mean, they said it's a great new area, ambitious, great goal. So there were some positives as well. But the reality is that we hit a road bump, right? Our paper was rejected. But that was not the only pothole we hit. If you look keenly, you'll notice that that paper, the system was called Traffic Sense. And up there on the screen earlier, we were talking about Nericell. So why that change? Well, what happened is that after the rejection, we took that paper, turned it into a tech report, and put it online. And within a few months, we got this email from a startup in Israel, essentially a cease and desist email, basically saying Traffic Sense was their trademark. And just to our paper was about road bumps and so on. And just to rub in the message, I guess they said we have bumped into your paper. Okay. And this thing, and we ask you to stop using the word Traffic Sense. So then we had to come up with a new name for the system. So we said, okay, you know what? Let's do the following. All three of us are Tamilians. So we basically picked up a Tamil word, which we were sure the Israelis would not have used, right? And so we picked, Nericell means congestion or crowding. And to appeal to this community, we spelt it as Nericell, Nericell. And as luck would have it, we had a paper accepted a few months later in Census. Clearly, the Census PC had a different or more flexible set of scientific standards than the MobiSys committee. They accepted the paper. And so that was the end of that paper. But, from our viewpoint, but, the idea really took off. The community, and we have to thank everyone in this room and beyond who sort of built on this idea and sort of built other systems for measuring traffic using smartphones. That's the citation count as of last week, according to Google Scholar. But what's particularly heartening is that it went beyond the traditional SIG mobile community. And I'll just give one example of that. So I don't think anyone in this room would really know this person, Peter Handel. He is a professor of signal processing at KTH in Stockholm. Several years ago, he emailed us about this paper. He was working on some related ideas and so on. And he has done a bunch of work on this whole idea of smartphone-based insurance telematics. I think he even started a company and so on. And over the years, we have exchanged several emails. He has in fact come to Bangalore because he collaborates with some people there. I have been to Stockholm a few times, but we have never met. So neither he or I have ever met, but he was very generous. So he was one of the people who supported the nomination of this paper. So I think this is particularly heartening because people beyond the traditional mobile systems community also, have seen value. In fact, Peter wrote this paper in some IEEE journal, I forget which one, just a couple of years ago, doing a 10-year retrospective on this area, and he had talked about Nericell and some other systems as well. Now, beyond papers and the research impact, there's obviously been lots of commercial activity in this space. Both technology companies as well as users of technology like insurance companies using smartphone-based apps to measure drivers and their driving. And again, we were fortunate to have the CTOs of a couple of these companies support the nomination, so we want to thank them as well. Now, in terms of lessons, I'll just sort of talk about two of them. The first is, one thing that we didn't do right is we didn't think of the human as the central sort of cog of the system. So we said we should automate everything, we should use sensors to measure all these things, not depend on humans. And so we never really thought about human-powered or human-assisted sensing, human-augmented sensing. In the meantime, some other people did. You may have heard of them. And good things happened to them. But the way we console ourselves is that we beat them to a paper. They got $1 billion, but we got the paper and we got this award. So the second lesson is actually more pertinent to this room. With MobiSys, you have to play the long game, right? Remember, 2008, they rejected our paper. They said, we rejected your paper. This time, the chairs were much nicer. They emailed us a few weeks ago, and they said that, thank you for selecting our conference for receiving your award, right? So in some sense, we certainly, all of us feel connected to this community, and it's nice to be back here talking about this work, even though our paper was rejected. In terms of the road ahead, just sort of very briefly, our work and a lot of other work has sort of used GPS and inertial sensing as the primary modalities of sensing. But what's missing in this is the broader context, right? If you see a sharp braking event based on your accelerometer reading, you don't know whether someone jumped in front of the vehicle and therefore the driver had to brake sharply, or whether the driver was distracted looking elsewhere and then they had to brake sharply because they suddenly noticed something in front, right? And that kind of context you can obviously get from cameras. So that's something we're working on using a smartphone that's on the dashboard with both cameras operating simultaneously. And this is an ongoing project called HEMS, which a bunch of us are working on. And there are interesting applications, like for example, one of the things we're working on is automating the driver license test. It's a completely broken system in India. So the idea is a smartphone would administer the driver's license test, and the government is quite interested. So hopefully you'll hear about it sometime soon. So finally, we want to thank several people. First of all, we want to thank the drivers at MSR India, who were really instrumental in allowing us to do these experiments. They had to fight their natural instincts to do this. For example, if there's a pothole, the driver would try to avoid it. We would ask them to go over it so that we could do our measurements, right? So they were really very patient and very helpful. In a sense, the SIGMobile community for building on these ideas and really sort of amplifying it. Our nominator, Robit Roy Chaudhary, as well as our endorsers, including Marco, for nominating us for this award, the committee, as well as all of you here at MobiSys 2019. It's been wonderful. Thank you.